Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In today's video, I would like to discuss basic function that prints a message. So here is my main public class that I have here, and there I have the call of a function that says say hello. So it's a name of a function that I defined below. So when I want to define this function, I simply write down this keyword public static void. For the moment, just imagine that this is what we need to write for a function. Then we are going to discuss various types of functions that have different keywords there. So public static void and then the name of the function. We can name it whatever we want. And because this function is a basic function and takes no parameter, there is nothing to be inside the parentheses here. Okay, and so nothing is there, it's empty. Then this function, whenever it is called, it is going to basically execute this message: system out println hello world. So hello world is going to be printed using the system out println. So when I run the code, you see that this hello world is being printed in the output. So what if I call the function twice? So when I write down say hello one more time and I run the code, we see hello world 2 times. Okay, so instead of printing these things like several times, instead of writing the system out println message 2 times, I simply call the function 2 times. So this function is going to be called 2 times, then this line is going to be executed 2 times. So this is why actually we have functions in programming, because when we want to perform a repetitive tasks, we need to put it inside a function. Therefore, whenever we call the function, this function is going to execute the repetitive task instead of just repeating ourselves in the main part of the code, which is going to reduce the readability of our code. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In today's video, we're going to discuss function that returns a value. So here is my function that is called add. And this function is going to have the public static int. So it means that the output of this function is not a void anymore, it's an integer. So there is an output for this function. When we are having the void before the name of the function, like here, it means that this function is not going to return anything in the output, but it is going to basically execute certain block of code. But here it means that this function has an output that is of integer type. This function add requires 2 parameters, a and b. Both of them are integer data type as well. Basically, whenever this function is called, it is going to print this for us in the output. It is going to basically not to print, but to return a plus b. It is going to calculate the addition of a and b in the output. Okay. So now in the main function here, I have the call of the function add with the numbers 5 and 3. And the output of this function is going to be assigned to a variable that is called a result, which is of int or integer data type, meaning that this function is called, it is going to return the output, and the output of this function is assigned to this variable. Okay. And then we are going to print the result variable. So this is why when I run the code, the function is going to calculate 5 plus 3, which is 8, and we are having 8 in the output. So if I have another variable that is result2, for example, and I am going to add instead, now I'm going to add 10 and 12, for example. Okay. And then I'm going to have system.out.println the result 2. I want to be printed in the output. So when I run the code, we see number 22 is being printed in the terminal, meaning that I called this function twice because I wanted to perform a repetitive task and with different parameters. This time I'm passing number 10 and 12 as a and b, and this function add is called. So on the right hand side, this call of the function is called. This function is going to execute a plus b, which is number 22. So the right hand side is 22 now. It is assigned to a variable result2 of integer data type, and here I'm going to print a result2 in the output. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In today's video, we're going to discuss function that takes a parameter. So here is the function that I defined. It's a public static void, and the name of this function is greet, and it accepts one parameter that is of type string, and the name of this parameter is name. Okay, so whenever this function is called, it is going to execute this block of code. It is going to print hello and then put the name there after the hello that is used when we call this function. So now let me call the function in the main function. So in the main function, I have only one line of the code. I have the call of the function that is greet. So I write down simply the name of my function there. Then inside parentheses, because this takes a parameter that is called name, I write down that here is Alice. Okay, so I want to have the call of the function that is Alice. So when I run the code, it says hello Alice. So this function is called, hello message is by default being printed. And then this name that is passed as the argument, which is Alice, is going to be printed there. So now I would like to have the greet function, and now I would like to write down the name of Reza. Okay, so I just write down the name of Reza. This name is going to be by default there. It's because of my compiler. If your compiler might even have it, it means that this Reza is going to be assigned to the name variable that is required when calling the greet function. So when I run the code now, this time it says hello Reza. You see it here? So this is basically a function that takes a parameter, and this function is going to basically print this line of the code plus the name that is used to call the function. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. In today's video, we are going to discuss function overloading or method overloading, meaning that we are having two functions with the same name, but they are having different parameters. Let me illustrate it with an example. So there are two functions that I defined apart from the main function. The first one is a void type, meaning that it is not going to return anything in the output. And the name of this function is say hi. In parentheses, you see it's empty, meaning that it requires no parameter. Whenever this say hi function is called, this line is executed. It is going to print hi. The only message that it is going to print is hi, simply that. Then we are having another say hi function, the exact same name, and it's a void type. But this time, this function requires one parameter whenever it is called. So whenever this say hi function is called, it needs a variable called name, which is of string data type. And whenever this function is called, it is going to execute this line, meaning that say hi and then add the name of the person. For example, I call this function with Reza, the name of Reza. It says hi Reza, but the previous one was simply just saying hi. Okay, so these are two functions, the same name, the same type, both of them are void type, but one of them requires parameter, the other one requires no parameter. Now in the main function, here I call the say hi, and again here I call the say hi function. Okay, so what happens here? We are having two functions. They're having the same name. They are of the void data type, but isn't it confusing for the compiler? So the compiler, how does the compiler understand which say hi function I would like to be executed? The compiler is going to mix these two functions or not? No, the answer is no. Why? The reason is that the compiler is very smart, because the compiler understands if you're calling the say hi function with no parameter, it understands that you're talking about the first function that requires no parameter. But if you're putting one parameter in the say hi function whenever it is called, it means that you're talking about this one. So the compiler can understand it. Yeah, it's smart. So I write down say hi, so it means that I'm calling the say hi function with no parameters in the parentheses, meaning that I want this function to be executed. Then I call the say hi function again, but this time I put the name Alice inside the parentheses, and the compiler understands, okay, this guy is trying to call the say hi function, the same hi function that has one parameter that is of a string, and he is passing a string. So it means that this person is talking about this say hi function. Okay, so when I run the code, firstly I see hi in the output, because firstly we call the say hi function and this one is being printed in the output. Then we see that hi Alice is being printed in the output, which is the result of this say hi function. So if I have the, for example, say hi, and then this time I write down Reza, for example, is when I run the code one more time, it is going to say hi Reza. So you see this part is being executed. But if I again say hi, call the say hi function with no parameters inside the parentheses, basically it is going to call the first say hi function, which is just printing hi in the output. Thanks for watching. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In today's video we are going to have a coding exercise that we are going to write a function to check if a number is even or not. So here is my main function. In the main function I have the call of a function that is check even, and in parentheses I have one parameter that is number 4. Okay, so on the right hand side I'm calling a function that is that is named check even, and its result is going to be stored in this variable that is called is even, which is of Boolean data type, meaning that it can be either true or false. So let me go and discuss the check even function. Here we see that this is a Boolean function, meaning that it is going to return a value when, instead of this Boolean, when we are having the void keyword, void 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 keyword, it means that that function is of void type, therefore it is not going to return anything. But when it is returned that it's Boolean, it means that it is going to have an output, and it is going, the output is of Boolean data type, meaning that it is going to return a Boolean data type. Instead of Boolean, if it was int, meaning that it was integer, it meant that it is going to return integer for us. Okay, so this is the Boolean function, that this is a function that is going to return Boolean for us. The name of the function is check even, and it is going to accept one parameter, int a number, meaning that that parameter needs to be of integer data type, and it is called number. This is the name of the parameter that needs to be passed for the check even function whenever it is called. So whenever this function is called, it is going to execute this line of code, which is basically returning the output of this line. So we call the function check even with number 4, meaning that that variable number equals 4 now. This number 4 is assigned to this number because this is a parameter we use inside the parentheses, and this is the by default let's say defined parameter for the function here, as we see. So that 4 is assigned to the variable number, and we check if that number, which is 4, divided by 2, and the remainder of their division, using the modulo operator, we can have the remainder of the division, equals 0. If this statement is true, it is going to return true. Otherwise, it is going to return false. So 4 divided by 2, the remainder of this division, is it equal to 0? Yes. Therefore, it is going to return true. So true is the output of this part. It is going to assign it to is even variable. And here, after that, we are going to see system out println, meaning that we are printing this message is even. It's a question, and then we put the value of the parameter. So is even is written there, the variable name, and if it holds the value true, it is going to print true in the output. Otherwise, it is going to print false in the output. So when I run this code, we see that here we expect to see the answer true in the terminal. So we say is even, and the answer is true. Why? Because 4 divided by 2, it's the remainder of this division equals 0, meaning that that number is even, because the definition of an even number is that when a number is divided by 2, the remainder of their division must be equal to 0 if that number is an even number. Otherwise, it's an odd number. So let me try another number. So instead of 4, let me write down, for example, 5 and run the code one more time. So now I expect to see false in the output, because 5, when it is divided by 2, the remainder of their division is not equal to 0. Therefore, this statement is not true. Therefore, this statement is false, so it is going to return false. The right hand side is false. False is assigned to is even variable, and it is being printed in the output. So is even? No, false. So this is how basically we can define a function to check whether a number is an even number or not. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. In today's video, we are going to write a program that defines a function, and that function needs to find the maximum of two numbers. So let's dive in. In the main function, I have a call of a function that is called find max, and there are two parameters so that is passed when we are calling this function. So this function find max is here. So when I go there, we see that it's of integer function type, meaning that it is going to return an integer value for us. So this is the name of the function. We can change it as we wish. And there are two parameters inside the parentheses, meaning that whenever we call this function, we need to have two parameters inside the parentheses, and they have to be of integer data type. Basically, whenever this function is called, this line of code must be executed. This part of the code, this block of code is executed. And there we are checking to see if the value of A is larger than B, greater than B. So the first parameter is greater than the second parameter. If so, return A, because A is the larger, greater value, because this is a function to find us the maximum of two numbers. So if A greater than B, return A, meaning that, okay, so we're comparing, for example, 10 and 7. If A equals 7 and B equals 10, so 7, is it larger than 10? No. This statement is not true, therefore it's not going to return A. Else, meaning that if this condition is not true, it is going to go to the else part and it is going to return B, which is number 10. So let me explain it one more time. Here I have a call of a function with two parameters, 7 and 10. The output of this function is going to be assigned to the right hand side of this, okay? Meaning that we call the function with A equals 7 and B equals 10. We check here, it is going to return B for us because 10 is greater than 7. So the output is this B, which is number 10. So 10 is on the right hand side. It is assigned to a variable of integer data type, which is called max. Then we are printing max in the output. So when I run the code, we see the maximum is 10. So let me change the number. So now this one is 17 and B is 10. So when I run the code one more time, basically what happens here is that A equals 17, B equals 10 now. So 17, is it greater than 10? Yes, so return A. And this part of the code is never going to be executed. So it is returning A, which is number 17. On the right hand side, we have the 17. It is assigned to the variable max. And finally, in the next line, I'm printing the variable max here in the output. So this is basically how to define a function to find the maximum of two numbers. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to this video. In today's video, we're going to have a coding exercise. In this coding exercise, we're going to have void versus a return function comparison. So there are different types of functions, like the function with default parameter or default value, a void function, or a function that returns a method. And in the return method, we are having different types of function as well, like a function that returns integer, a function that returns a string, a function that returns float, etc., etc. So here now we would like to compare functions that return some value in general with void functions. So now in the main function, if you see, as you see here, I have this line. First of all, I'm calling a function that is called print square, and we are having one parameter that is number 4 inside the parentheses. So the compiler, whenever it sees this line, it is going to execute this function. Basically, this function is called print square. It's a void type, and it requires one parameter. So whenever this function is called, it needs to be called with a parameter in the parentheses that must be of integer data type. So number 4 is the variable x here. Okay, this function is of void data type. Sorry, this function is of void type. So this function is not going to return anything for us. Basically, it is going to perform the execution of certain blocks of code. That's it. It's not going to return anything. So whenever this function is called, it is going to execute this line, meaning that it is going to print this message first, saying that square is, and then do the calculation. So x multiplied by x, which is number 4, multiplied by 4, it is 16, and we see it here in the output. Okay, so this is the void function that we have here. Now I would like to discuss another function. So the second line, on the right hand side, we see that we are having a call of a function that is called getSquare, and we are having one parameter inside the parentheses, and that parameter is number 5. So whenever the compiler sees this part, it is going to execute and call this function. So getSquare function is called. We need one parameter that is of integer data type, exactly like the previous function. It is requiring an integer number in the parentheses that we are having number 5 here. So 5 is assigned to the variable x. This getSquare function is of integer type, meaning that it is going to indeed return a value. So it is going to return a value for us. And what would be that value? It's here. So return x multiplied by x. So basically, whenever this function is called, it is going to calculate x multiplied by x, and it is going to return this value. So 16, let's say, sorry, number 5 multiplied by 5, it will be 25. So 25 is the answer of the right hand side, which is assigned to the variable called result, which is of integer type. And a result equals 25 now. And then in the next line, we are going to print this message, return square, then number 25 is being printed as we see it here in the output. So in this video, we learned the differences between a void function that is going to simply execute a certain blocks of code with a function that is going to return a value. In this case, it was of integer type, the function. Thanks for watching. Hello everybody, what's up? In today's video, we would like to discuss calling a method from another method. So basically we would like to discuss calling a function that is called from another function. Let me illustrate it with an example. So here is my main function. In this main function, I am calling a function that is called start, okay? And it requires no parameter because there is no parameter inside the parentheses. So we go and check this start function. So we go, and here we see that when in the main function this line is written, the compiler is basically going to implement this line of code. So it is going to call the start function and then execute this part of the code. So this is a start function with no parameters. It's a void type. It means that it is not going to return anything. Whenever this start function is called, it is going to basically print this message saying that starting ... okay, starting. After that, it is going to call a function that is called display message. Whenever the compiler sees this line of code, it is going to execute this function now. So this is another function that is called display message. It's a void type. It is not going to return anything. And then whenever it is called, it is going to print this message, hello from inside another method. Okay. So when I run the code, you see that first of all, this starting is being printed. So I call the start function. It goes and execute this function. this is what is being printed. Then it is going to call the display message function. Inside the display message function, it is going to write down hello from inside another method. So you see that this message is being shown there. So basically in the main function here, I'm calling the start function that you see here. And in the start function, which is this part, I am calling the display message function, and then this function is being executed. So in this video, we learned how to call a function from another function.